Recording right now.
Okay.
So we are live on Zoom, and we are going live on Facebook right now. Okay. So we are live right now. We're just going to give a couple minutes for everybody to join us here. So for everybody that's joining us, this is Brendan from the Exercise Therapy Association. I'm here on behalf of the whole association and all of its representatives. And I'm here with Dr. Ken Kinakin. And today's session is for everyone's benefit. We're going to increase clarity on what's going on with the health industry. We're going to get some really helpful cutting edge tips on how you can optimize your own health and stay safe at this time based on some of the wisdom Ken Kinakin has collected. And we're also going to help build some strategies so that you can emerge from this COVID-19 crisis better than ever. So we're all in this together as health professionals, and we're here to pick the brain of one of the smartest guys I've ever met and one of the most giving people I've ever met, Dr. Ken Kinakin. And Dr. Kinakin, one of the things that, let me just pull this up here. One of the things that I wanted to do was just share a little bit about your story for those who may not know who you are. So my first experience with Dr. Ken Kinakin was shortly after I graduated university in 2003. I had imposter syndrome. I'm not sure if anyone can relate. I had clients asking me questions I didn't know the answers to. So I was frantically online, signing up for every course I could, taking every certification, reading every book. I would even travel to the States and go to like the NSCA conference and everything else. And on my intellectual voyage, I randomly found Dr. Ken Kinakin online. And he was teaching a muscle testing seminar. And I had no idea what that meant. But I signed up anyways because it looked like people had good things to say about him. So the minute I showed up there, I could just tell by his presence that this guy was a wise leader. He just gave off that vibe. And the minute he started talking, it just verified that for me. I can't even express how much practical wisdom I collected from that very first seminar. I learned tools that I still use to this day all the time. And not only that, but Ken also set a really good example of how to be a role model. He exercised great humility, great curiosity. His jokes were actually really funny. And, I was engaged the whole time. So one thing about Ken is he's also a published author. He wrote the book Optimal Muscle Training. It's all about how to do muscle testing. There's even a DVD that shows you the videos. He's also a health practitioner. He works under the traditional title of chiropractor, although he's a jack of many trades and has developed skill sets in many diverse areas, and he can definitely put on many different hats. And he's also a teacher. He teaches courses, as I've mentioned, and he also runs and put on the Swiss conference. And for those in the health industry, you may know of the Swiss conference as being basically like the all-star game of health professionals, all in one venue. He flies in all the top people from all over the world. He does these things every couple of years, and we talk about it for years. And that's where I picked up a lot of my greatest wisdom and educational assets, thanks to his generosity and his heart of gold with all of the wonderful work he's doing out there today. So just give me a virtual round of applause to welcome Dr. Ken Kinakin. And the thing with Dr. Ken Kinakin is, I reached out to him just to ask him if he would be willing to share his wisdom at this very important time for all of us. And he so graciously agreed, and that's why he's here today. So Ken, thank you for joining us here today to share your wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Now, just for those who don't know you, how did you get to where you are in your career? What's kind of been your journey professionally?
So I'm originally from Kelowna, British Columbia. And when I was living there, I grew up there, went to school, and I competed in bodybuilding and left that and went into powerlifting. And then back in the early 80s, I was getting ready for the Canadian National Championships. I was going to try and make the world powerlifting team. And I sustained a knee injury 2 weeks before the Canadians. I was just warming up with 400 pounds, and I was squatting about 525 at 165 pounds at that time. And I felt my right knee, it sounded like a bed sheet ripping. So I had to pull out of the competition. I couldn't squat. So that took me on a journey to try and find out how can I help heal this. So I went to see the medical doctor. He said, you shouldn't squat. It's bad for the knees. You should do leg extension instead. I said, well, they're not going to bring a leg extension machine onto the platform. So we got to figure out. And I said, it's not the squat because my left knee is okay. So I knew something was wrong. With any type of injury, if it's both areas, it's either your technique is bad or you just overloaded the system too much. But if one side gets injured and the other side doesn't, there's usually something dysfunctional in the system. And so that's what the goal is. So I went through the normal channels as far as seeing massage therapist, went to see a physiotherapist, everyone to try and fix my knee. And this was an 8 or 9 month journey. And I got back to the point where I could squat 400 pounds, but I couldn't squat anymore because my right knee would bother me too much. And I could run up and down stairs, but my main focus was to get back onto the lifting platform. So my dad goes, why don't you go see the chiropractor? I said, why? It's my knee, it's not my back. He said, go. I said, all right. Thought I'd humor him. And so anyways, I went to see his chiropractor, Merv Ritchie, great chiropractor, and he did all this muscle testing on me. Now, you have to know that Merv is a marathon runner, and he literally weighs 130 pounds. Like his arm is literally about this big, about the size of the pen. And so I think I'm all jacked up and everything else. And on my right leg, no strength whatsoever. Left leg, full strength. So he does all this muscle testing on me, and he determines that it actually has nothing to do with my knee. My knee injury had actually healed, but the dysfunction was actually in the low back, my pelvis. He took x-rays, and we could see the whole pelvis had been torqued. He says, it's actually coming from your back. You're getting a neurological inhibition. So when you overload the system, which you do when you start squatting over 400, the system breaks down. No different than if you're driving your car and say you're in the winter and you hit some black ice and the tire hits a curb, the tire's out of balance. If you go at 50 kilometers an hour, you don't feel anything. You go 100 kilometers an hour, the steering wheel shakes. Now, you could replace the steering wheel and it'll still shake. Why? Because it has nothing to do with the steering wheel. It actually has to do with the tire. So if you follow that chain all the way back down to the tire, you balance the tire, the steering wheel will not shake anymore. Neither will the tire. So anyways, we worked on the low back area for about 2 or 3 weeks. Literally, I was back squatting over 500 pounds with no pain. And so I was like, wow, this is awesome. So I'm a welder by trade. So I was building bridges and all this other stuff. And so I decided to go back to school to become a chiropractor because this just inspired me so much. And I'm not that smart in the sense of I don't have photographic memory or anything else. So I had to work really, really hard in order to get into school and to go through that. And I came out here to Toronto in 1986, and I graduated in 1991. And so my focus over those years was to learn as much as I could as far as how can because I could see the results, but weight training and any type of treatment or even rehab really wasn't there. No one was really talking about it. If you had low back pain, that's one thing. But for sports performance, especially in the weight training field, there was always a problem with that. So in the early 90s, I started to put, different seminars, and people would hire me as far as, how to assess and actually how to treat. And I started to build up my acumen and everything else. And the main person that was an influence in the muscle testing was Dr. David Leaf and Dr. George Goodhart. Dr. George Goodhart in the 60s created a certain style, a technique called applied kinesiology. And all that really means is that you use muscle testing and you see what factors can actually strengthen the muscle or inhibit the muscle. It's an indicator. And so for years, we've been able to utilize those different protocols and ideas. And then with Dr. David Leaf, I would just basically follow him wherever he went between him and George. And I saw other presenters do the muscle testing, but I like the way that Dr. Leaf basically was a very flow chart. It's like, test this, test this. If this is weak, this is what you need to do. If it's strong, go down this path. And so, and the nice thing with applied kinesiology and muscle testing is that it's a variety of things. It's not just the adjustment. So I look at chiropractic adjustments as a modality, as I look at acupuncture as a modality, as I look at laser as a modality, or pulse magnetic field as a modality. So it's dependent on what the person actually needs at that point in time. And then through the 90s, I started to see that a real kind of interesting occurrence where the personal trainers were trying to fix things by exercise. And some things you can and some things you can't. Like you wouldn't be able to fix my knee problem by doing exercises. It's basically a structural issue that needed treatment. Conversely, we saw in the treatment area, you saw doctors, chiropractors, medical doctors, physiotherapists, massage therapists, giving actually not the best training advice. You know, squats are bad for the knees was a classic example. So my goal in 1999 was, and it was, honestly, it was just a giant experiment. I wanted to see whether or not it would work in the sense of what if we got the health professionals and the fitness professionals in the same room conversing and educating each other, and also networking so that they can refer to each other as far as on their strengths or weaknesses based on what they're actually feeling. And so in 1999, I brought in probably about 12 presenters, and I had 400 people come, which was unbelievable. I went, wow, this is awesome. So I did it again in 2001, or in 2000, 2001, 2002, and in 2003 we had SARS, so I couldn't do it. And then in 2004, I did it again. 2005, I did it, and then I stopped for 10 years because I saw that the large conferences weren't as well attended, primarily because of the internet. People were getting their information from the internet. And that's where I came up, and it gave me time to build out my clinic, and I put a training center in there and everything else. And I wrote my book, and then also developed exercise muscle testing. So I started doing more small, different types of seminars. And I did that for about 10 years. And everyone always asked me, you ever going to do Swiss again? And the whole thing with Swiss is that financially, it was always a huge hit. Like I would always, treat the presenters well, and I'd extend as much as possible. So from a financial aspect, it wasn't profitable in the least. I lost so much money, and I would do it again because I mean the changes that we've seen in the industry, a lot of it is due to the connections that people had at Swiss, such as Precision Nutrition, the people John Berardi and the people that put together that nutrition program met at Swiss. Chris and Ann Frederick, that he came out to Swiss in 2002. And I had him sit at a table with Ed McNeely. Ed McNeely was the actual acquisition editor for Human Kinetics. So they're talking over the presenter dinner, and Ed is impressed with what they have to say. And he said, hey, do you guys want to do a book? And I got actually an email when I came back in 2015. I got an email from Chris Frederick. Ken, it's because of you that we're so popular because of the book. And I went, cool, which is what the whole symposium is about. Over the years, I always talked about, the symposium happens in the hallway. And unless you're there, you don't really understand it. I couldn't verbalize it or put it into words until last year, where I found that the presentations happen in the ballrooms, where it's basically from the stage to the audience, imparting information. In the hallways, it's a two-way conversation. And the unique thing is that there really is no other place to go So all the presenters stay there. In fact, they want to see the other presenter. Like if there's a presenter up on stage, if Dr. Leaf is sitting there, there'll be another 10 or 15 other presenters sitting in the back, learning, criticizing, because we're dealing with a whole bunch of alpha males and alpha females. So everyone knows when you get the best of the world all there, you know, they want to learn, but they're also going, he's a little off here, he's a little off there. And everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, without a doubt. But I mean, but you have the opportunity to sit down and chat with a lot of the different presenters. And they're there. And it's just, and everyone leaves their ego at the door. Just because there's so many high-level people, you can't be egotistical. We've had a few people, a few chuckleheads over the years that showed up and they thought that, you know, they were, you know, beyond smart, and they, you know, they were enlightened really good. In fact, they weren't invited back.
Okay. So just an update. I think you answered like 10 of my first 10 questions in your story. So I didn't interrupt you because you were answering everything I was going to ask you. Now we do have about 50 people on Facebook Live now that have joined us.
Hi, everyone.
By all means, if you guys do have any questions, please post them there for us and I'll check in and periodically throw some of those questions by Ken. If you just tuned in, just give us a like if you can hear everything okay, if you can see everything okay. Also, just to update, I kind of asked Ken to tell us a little bit about what his story and what brought him to this point in his career. He was out in BC, he was powerlifting, he hurt his knee. Against his, against his better thinking, he took a recommendation to see a chiropractor who ended up fixing what wasn't actually a knee problem, and it made him a lot better. So he went from 400 to 500 pounds in his squat and everything else. And then that intrigued him. So he went on the chiropractic journey to learn more. And he noticed that there was an opportunity to bridge the gap between trainers who weren't doing the rehab stuff as optimal as they could, and the rehabilitation professionals who weren't doing the training stuff as well as they could. So he decided to bring them together under one house, create a community called the Swiss Conference. In that time, there's been many powerful professional connections made and relationships started, all because of that conference. I don't think we can fully measure the influence, the positive influence of Ken Kinakin in our profession, because those are just the stories he knows of. I haven't even told him about all the fantastic people I've met at the conference and all the fantastic conversations I've had in the hallway. Once again, that's the Swiss Conference. It's like the NHL All-Star Game of health conferences. And right now, one of the really cool things is, if you're not familiar, you could always go online and put yourself through your own Swiss university, because he's got all of those sessions from the past online. So you can sit there with your clipboard and use this as an opportunity to go to school, the School of Swiss, and take in all of those educational sessions from the past that you might have missed. Maybe figure out who you enjoy learning from. Maybe figure out some things you didn't know before, expose yourself to some different things. So I think that pretty much, does that sum up your story for you there?
Yeah, what's your experience with Swiss?
Okay, so I first heard about it and I went in, I think it was 2002.
Oh, wow, okay.
2003 I first went, and literally it exposed me to people like Paul Chek and Charles Poliquin and all those different types of health professionals, David Leaf and all these people, and that really directed my learning journey. So I decided, okay, so I can learn a lot from all of these people. So I went and decided to learn and go down all these different roads, figure out what I liked, what I didn't like, what worked for me, what doesn't work for me, what's applicable to the types of clients I see. But it really helped to give me lots of different options on my learning journey. You know, there's a saying that if you throw enough spaghetti at the wall, some of it's going to stick. And I would consider Swiss almost like a food fight. You're going to have so much stuff thrown around, some of it's going to stick to you. You know, some of those different concepts and things like that are going to stick. And I find every time I go to Swiss, there's always something that I didn't know that really gets me on a new learning journey. I know one time I always challenge myself to go see the session that I know nothing about and completely don't understand. And you know, one year it was seeing matrix repatterning with George Roth. And it just blew my mind. And I became good friends with George, visited his clinic many times, sent many clients to him. He's really changed my thinking on a lot of things. But I just took that challenge of going to the sessions that I know nothing about, because that's oftentimes when you can have your mind blown. So for me, it's one of those things that I've always prioritized. In fact, when I got married back in 2016, the date of the Swiss conference was a non-negotiable that we weren't allowed to get married on that weekend. That was actually, and I said, look, you can get married whenever you want, just not on the weekend of Swiss. That's a non-negotiable here. But that's how much it meant to me, and that's how much it meant to my career. So that's Ken, why don't we talk a little bit about this really unique season in the human story that we're all going through, and just from your perspective, why don't you just update us on, you know, what's going on out there as you see it, as it pertains to this COVID-19 crisis?
Well, I think this is literally, you know, I was just thinking yesterday, especially since we got another message from the Premier, Doug Ford, that we're going to be in a state of emergency for another 4 weeks. So I've been out of the clinic since March 16th. And the whole focus has been, you know, what can I do in order to learn more about this as far as the actual disease process? So we're seeing from the mainstream media, and they have their own idea. And, you know, they're all focused on, you know, we got to get the vaccine out. The challenge that you have with the vaccine, I worked in a medical clinic with 13 medical doctors for 5 years. And they used to do flu shots at the clinic. And I would ask the medical doctors, do you get the flu shot? And they go, no. I go, why? It doesn't work. What people don't realize with the vaccines is that if the virus or the bacteria mutates, the vaccine doesn't really work, the success of it. So even if they do come out with the vaccine, it's not going to be 100%. There is no vaccine. SARS, so this is SARS-2. And SARS that happened in 2003, that was, what, 17 years ago? We still don't have a vaccine for that. So if they're going to roll something out in 12 months, like, really? You know, I realize that they got 41 different drug companies working on a vaccine. The US government has given, I think, $1 billion to each company with taxpayers' money to try and find this vaccine. And I have no problems with vaccines in the sense of if it's used intelligently in the sense. A lot of them should be used, you know, especially if you go into Africa, and that can help protect you. You know, that's just being intelligent. But with this one is a little different. Where it came from, how it came about, there's a whole bunch of stories. Don't necessarily need to get into that here. But this is a nasty virus. And so if you do get it, most people that will get it, especially if you're, I think in Ontario, I looked yesterday, there's only one person under the age of 40 that has actually passed away due to this COVID virus, COVID-19. And whether or not it was due to the virus or whether or not they had some other disorder. And what is starting to happen in the United States, and I think even in Canada, is that if you get the virus, if they test you and you have the virus and you do die, they basically say that it's due to the virus, when in fact it may not be. It'd be like me having prostate cancer and I have a heart attack and I die. It has nothing to do with the prostate cancer. I just had prostate cancer when I died. Yeah. And if you live old enough as a male, we're all going to have prostate cancer. The whole thing is that, will it actually make an impact, you know, on your life in that way? So my focus for the past 4 to 5 weeks, I could see what was happening. So I started preparing and getting my food ready and everything else about 8-10 weeks ago, because I could see things starting to happen. And just with the herd mentality, we saw that with toilet paper. Yeah. And so, and with food and the food chains and everything else. So the whole thing is, how do you prepare yourself from a lot of different ways? The first thing that probably you need to do is prepare yourself. And so looking at this virus, there really is no cure. You know, if you're exposed to it, it's extremely virulent in the sense of the affinity. The molecular, the actual virus molecule has been altered so that it can stay on surfaces between 3 to 9 days. So that's why they're all trying to keep people's distances and everything else of that nature. And it's an airborne virus. So if someone sneezes, and you get hit with it in the face, it's It's called the viral load in the sense of how much have you been actually exposed to. So one of the things that you can do is increase what is known as your para-immunity. So can you see that, Brendan?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. This is called
Except for your massive mid-deltoid was in the way of the second word, but
yeah.
para-immunity. Got it.
So this virus, for whatever reason, is apparently it came from bats, known as the horseshoe bat. Whether or not it came from a biological lab or it was a mutation, we don't know. We'll never know that. But this type of virus utilizes vitamin C at an extremely high rate. And the vitamin C, if it's high enough, the viral load decreases. The virus can't live in high dosages of vitamin C. That's why in New York, they're using a lot of IV as far as vitamin C. In Wuhan, the hospitals were using up to 24 grams of IV vitamin C. And the mainstream media is sort of saying, yeah, we've seen that it works, but we haven't seen double-blind studies or anything else of that nature. Well, guess what? When this vaccine rolls out, they don't have enough time to do any double-blind studies. They're just going to roll this out and say that it works. So they do see a difference. So talking to some of the top doctors and Swiss presenters and research and everything else and watching it. So you need to get yourself onto some vitamin C. And you want to start out with about 1 gram. If you don't take any vitamin C, start out with 500 to 1,000 milligrams. And then over time, you can slowly increase it. And you can increase it to about, some of the studies have shown up to about 4 grams. Now, if you take 4 grams today and you've never taken vitamin C, you're going to be sitting on the toilet all day because it'll create loose bowels. It'll actually pull the water out of your system into the bowel and you're going to have diarrhea, which is not a good thing. So if you slowly titrate it up, every couple of days, you can go up 500 milligrams. That will increase your para-immunity. That will increase your ability to, if you do get with the virus, it will decrease the amount that you're actually on. Yes.
So for those who are just tuning in, one of the reasons I asked you about this is because I know you're a very thorough wisdom seeker. And I know you're connected, and I know that you will literally spend every minute figuring this thing out. And I thought, I don't have all the time. I'm just going to ask somebody smarter than me. So I defer to your greater wisdom on this. Basically, to summarize for everybody tuning in, this virus is like a moving target. So a vaccine will quickly become irrelevant because it is changing all the time, correct?
Yeah, there's apparently 8 different variations now.
Okay, so there's 8 different variations. So there's also evidence that this virus can't live in an environment that has high dosages of vitamin C. The media...
It'll decrease it. It can still live, but the whole thing is based on viral load. And what I mean by that, think of it as alcohol. If I have 1 glass of wine, yeah, I can handle it. If I have 1 bottle, I'm getting a little drunk. If I have 2 or 3 bottles, I'm flat on the floor.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing as the virus. If you get hit with a little bit of virus, your immune system can handle it, especially if you have enough what is known as para-immunity. If you increase your stores of everything, we can't produce vitamin C. We actually have to get it externally. We're not like other animals that can produce it themselves. So the whole thing is to increase the amount that is actually in the system. So if you do get hit with it, at least you're prepared. And
you're suggesting 500 to 1,000 milligrams to start, and progress gently, potentially up to 4 grams. If you're spending all day on the john, you progress too quick, basically.
Yeah, back it down.
Perfect. Got it.
So that would be the first thing. The second thing is that you want to get yourself some zinc. And with zinc, zinc is a viricide. It basically kills viruses in that situation. I have a number of papers that discuss that. So if you increase your viral load or you get hit with a viral load, at least you can decrease it with another combination. Now, one of the tricks that you can do is that you can actually use a zinc lozenge, because the virus is respiratory. It'll go in through the respiratory tract or through the mouth and trachea, and that's where it'll start to go. So you can get a zinc and vitamin C lozenge. The combination would be unbelievable on that. So you can get this at any health food store. So a zinc lozenge would be great. Yes.
Now, people want to know, how much vitamin C and zinc do you actually take?
I take different forms. So I usually go in and I'll get an IV when, like I work with Dr. Gerges, so he'll give me an IV, and I'll go up to 2 or 3 grams at one sitting from an IV standpoint. But right now, I have a different type of vitamin C, and I'm probably about 3 to 4 grams right now. If I can build it up, I will. But I just find that sometimes I can feel my stomach sort of rumbling. I'm like, yep, back it down, back it down.
Okay, good.
So that's another one. The other one that we've seen is selenium. And selenium is really good as far as stopping the ability of the virus to actually implant the RNA into and DNA into the actual cell. Now, my girlfriend Wendy, she said, did you know that Brazil nuts have selenium? I went, no. So each Brazil nut has 50 micrograms of selenium. You need about 200 micrograms a day to help as far as to build up your para-immunity. So if you eat 4 Brazil nuts, that's all you need. So if you don't want to buy the supplement, go to the health food store, buy a bunch of Brazil nuts. I'm eating them all day.
Now a quick question. I think I actually read about that in Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Body. He talks about Brazil nuts and selenium. Yes. And one quick question for those who might be curious. Some people just maybe don't take supplements. What would you encourage as natural sources, in your opinion, for the vitamin C and the zinc part of the equation?
You won't get enough.
Okay.
You won't get enough. I would go with the supplement. At this point in time, I get, some people want to do it all naturally. You can. Probably the only way, it's just that in order to get that much of a dosage, it's very difficult. You can't eat that much. What you can do is you can juice it. So you can juice oranges. So you can get a whole container. Could you eat 5 oranges at one time? Probably not. Could you juice 5 oranges? Absolutely. Now, when you do juice, make sure. So if I get, say, half a cup of juice, say orange juice, you want to increase it. You want to dilute it down. So say you get 6 ounces of orange juice, pure orange juice. You want to put another 6 to 12 ounces of water in that. Why? Because there's no fiber. Basically you're going to get a huge sugar spike, on that. So when you start juicing, you actually have to dilute it down. The other trick that you can do is, because a lot of people, they drink things very fast, and 30% of your digestion happens in your mouth. The other thing is mastication creates a neurological message to the stomach that food is coming. So it starts producing acid. And we see this with people doing protein powders and everything else, and they say that I'm always bloated with whenever I take any protein powder or any shakes. I say, well, what you do is you basically take a sip and you chew it. So you chew your liquid. And I learned that from Dr. David Leaf and Dr. Sandy Wood and Dr. Karim Dehani, where just the idea of the mastication, number one, it slows you from gulping. And number 2, it produces the different enzymes in the mouth. And number 3, it produces the enzymes in the stomach. I've done this many times with many pro bodybuilders and everything else. All their gas and bloating goes away.
So just to put it in different terms, it's almost like exercise. You can have the right exercise or the right foods, but you can do them with the wrong form.
Correct.
And the wrong form with the right foods is to gulp them quickly and not be able to absorb the nutrients, because it all comes down to not what you're consuming, but what you absorb, correct?
What you absorb, but even more importantly, what is broken down. So
And
a lot of times you won't be able to break it down properly. So that's the challenge. Like, you're overloading the system too quickly. So those are some of the things that you can do. The other thing that I would recommend, this is one, it's kind of a offshoot, but this is quercetin. And quercetin is a bioflavonoid. And Michael Chrétien, who's Jean Chrétien's brother, is a PhD out of McGill. And he was working with Ebola, with a number of different viruses, and even with SARS. And they found that a derivative off of quercetin made a big difference. So you can take 500 milligrams of quercetin a day. So that would be a good combination. The other thing that you want to take, definitely, is vitamin D. You want to make sure your vitamin D status, and you want to take it with K2. So vitamin D, and you can take 3,000 to 5,000 international units a day. And what that will do is increase your immunity. Vitamin D is actually not a vitamin, it's a hormone. It's involved in a lot of it, but the immunity factor from it is enormous. So a lot of people, especially since we're coming out of the winter, most people are vitamin D deficient. So you definitely need vitamin D. The next thing is a good B complex. And the reason being, how this virus works is that it creates what is known, makes you go into what is known as ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome. And what that is that it creates an inflammatory response, a hyper response in the system. Especially if your perimmunity is down, the body all of a sudden overreacts. And so when it overreacts, it creates more inflammation. And the more inflammation it does, the more that the alveoli and inflammation happens in the lungs. And that's where you get the pneumonia, inability, and then you got to be put on a ventilator. Some of the papers that I've seen is B6 seems to decrease the actual cytokine storm. And so does B3. So I think if you just take a B complex, that would really be helpful. The last thing that I probably want to discuss as far as what you can do, and this is a real weird thing. So everyone's talking about the chloroquine, the one that Trump is talking about, as far as the one for malaria, and the medical doctors, and they're producing millions of dosage, and it's for malaria. And quinine, so I was watching this one video of this one doctor, and he says, why not just take quinine, which you can't buy, but guess where it's in? And I had no idea. It's in tonic water. Really? So this is fever tree. I just bought this at Nature's Emporium yesterday, and it has natural quinine. And quinine was used for malaria. So if you take 2 or 3 ounces a day, it actually doesn't taste bad at all. There's one with lemon, but this one is called fever tree. This one's natural, no sugar, no anything in it, and it has natural quinine. So this drug that everyone's running to, which is obviously way more powerful, is, and talking to some of the different doctors, they're using it with great success because the virus can't handle that. Now, there was just a study that they released yesterday that it was in Brazil, and saying that they had to stop the study because, they tried this one drug and chloroquine, and they said that it was creating heart arrhythmia. So then when you actually read the study, it was there was 2 different groups, a low dose group and an extremely high dose group. Well, the people in the extremely high dose group had all the arrhythmia. People in the low dose group didn't. And then they said, well, was it successful? And they went, well, there wasn't enough people in the low dose group, so we don't know. So that may have been sort of a hit job study, because I think certain people have certain agendas. So those are some of the things that you can do as far as how can I help my immunity? Because this whole idea of, is there anything, one specific thing that targets it and takes care of it? No. Can you boost your immune system? Which is really weird because everyone's talking about sanitization, your hands, wearing a scarf, mask, whatever, staying away from, people that are sick, basically just good common sense and good hygiene on that. But no one has really discussed, okay, we know the immunity is important because the groups that are unfortunately passing away are in long-term homes. And these are the people, the vast majority, I just looked yesterday, the vast majority are 80 years old and older. My dad would be a classic example. He's still at home. He's had 4 heart attacks. He's down to 17% heart function. He's on oxygen. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But he would be a classic person that if you got the actual virus, the virus would take him out. Not because the virus is that powerful, but it's because he's so sick. His system is just so taxed, and it has been for a long time. So he's being intelligent, saying, you know what, I'm just staying away from everyone, which is a good thing.
So just to bring it back for everybody, it reminds me of something I heard once at the SWINS conference. Kareem Danani once said that you can't grow daisies in cement.
Right.
So if the virus is the daisy, you can't grow it if you cement your immune system and really power it up at this time. And your recommendations, I'm just going to summarize them and summarize some of the suggested dosages for everybody, and you can just correct me if I've got anything wrong. Okay. Vitamin C, starting off with 500 to 1,000 milligrams. You can work your way up to 4 grams over time. Yep. It's better in supplement form. Zinc lozenges you recommend. Also selenium, or you can have about 4 Brazil nuts as an alternative to selenium. You recommended 500 milligrams of quercetin.
Yeah.
Also vitamin D with K2. You recommended 3,000 to 5,000 international units daily.
Yeah.
And you recommended B complex to decrease inflammation. B3 and B6 were shown to have some benefit. You just recommend a B complex for everybody. And then just for fun, just to wash it all down, about 2 to 3 ounces a day of tonic water. And that's your Kinakin. That's your Kinakin COVID cocktail right there.
You know what? That's just to boost my immune system. And I'm just trying to target, because I actually take way more than what I take, probably 3 times the amount of what I just showed you of other supplements. I take supplements for the kidney, for the liver, for the fish oils, a number of different supplements, from just to build up my own immunity, but also just to remain as healthy as possible.
Excellent.
So,
now we may revisit, we do have some more supplement questions posted here. We may revisit that later on if we have time, but I'd like to move on to a different topic now, which is more so we've discussed some options to help keep yourself safe and to keep your clients safe. And I trust your wisdom and guidance because I know how thorough you are, and I know that your moral character is in the right place, and you've got a heart of gold, and you really are looking out for everyone's best interests, and you're putting in all the hard work behind the scenes to bring the best information to us possible. So on behalf of everyone, I just want to acknowledge that and thank you immensely for everything you do and everything you are. Now, I wanted to get your expertise for everybody in terms of what is going on with the health industry right now. How are things going to change? And what are some thoughts and suggestions you have on how people might be able to pivot or shift or reinvent themselves for life on the other side of this COVID-19 crisis?
So everyone now has an enormous opportunity to focus in on the post-COVID economy. And what I mean by that is we're seeing unprecedented amount of unemployment. I think the United States now is like 30 million people. In Canada, it's gone from like 3% up to 10%. We may be at 15 to 20. And, and it's interesting how they're denoting that, whether or not you're unemployed. Like right now, I'm unemployed. I'm not an unemployment insurance, but they're not counting me in that. So literally the entire economy has basically been in lockdown, and people are really struggling because they literally, before this even came out, people usually were one paycheck away from being in trouble as far as not having enough money for rent or for food or anything else of that nature. So right now, and I'm going to make the assumption for the trainers that most of the people here are personal trainers. Your industry is probably going to be hit the hardest, primarily because in personal training, it's not covered by any insurance. My profession is, but we're living in the same kind of world. So as a personal trainer, what you need to do is basically focus in on two different areas where, number one, people will not have enough money to basically pay for the personal training. And that's going to be a big challenge. Now, they do have money for specialization. And what I mean by that is the years and the ability for people to pay for generalists. Like if you just got your personal training certification and you took a couple of courses in different things, before March, people had money and they were willing to actually invest in that. I do not think that they're going to be doing that. Number one is because people have been training at home. So they're learning on how to train by themselves, and they can still do it. Is it as effective? Absolutely not. But I think the biggest thing is the money aspect, and they will pay for a specialist. I was in the fall, I was at the chiropractic college, and they had a thing called speed mentoring. So it was myself and about 12 other chiropractors that have been in the chiropractic industry for about 20, 30 years. I'm in my 28th year in the profession. And so second, third, and fourth year students could sit down with us for about 10 minutes. And I would impart my knowledge as far as to give them ideas, tips, tricks, how to focus in on it. And from the chiropractic perspective, and it's the same thing for personal trainers, is that you need to create a niche for yourself. You need to focus in on one area that you become very, very good at. In fact, you become the go-to person. And so I basically broke it down to, you can either look at a body part, you can look at a condition, you can look at a sport. And so I asked him, I said, so let's take a look at a body part. And I looked at, everyone that would sit there, and I go, so who's the number one guy in Ontario, if not the world, for low back pain? And everyone's like, Stu McGill. He's written many books, University of Waterloo. He's presented at Swiss. Probably one of the most brilliant people in the sense of, if you have low back pain, this is what we need to do. But he also works with athletes. I said, okay. I said, so let's take a look at a sport. Who's the number one chiropractor for football in Toronto? And they had no idea. How about soccer? Yeah, even though TFC won, no one could come up with that. How about basketball? The Raptors won. Yeah, there is no chiropractor for that. I said, how about weight training? They went, you. I said, correct. I said, because it's been my focus for the past 30 years. If anyone asks me to present, they always say, what do you want to present on? I go, weight training injuries. I wrote a book on weight training injuries. I put on a giant symposium on weight training injuries. Any article I do is on weight training injuries. I do podcasts. What do I talk about? Weight training injuries. Why? Because I like weight training. I've been competing in powerlifting for 40 years. So if I have a powerlifter in, Charmaine, who runs my clinic, she knows to give me extra time. Why? Because I start yapping too much about powerlifting. I love it. If you're a cyclist, great. We have nothing in common. I could probably help you, and I'll probably send you to some people that I do know that love cycling, that know everything about cycling, the same thing as I know everything about powerlifting. So this one third year student, So I would ask everyone, and everyone's giving me ideas. And this one third-year student went, I said, so what's your passion? Because what I want to do is turn your passion into your profession. And so I said, what's your passion? He says, badminton. I said, really? He says, yeah, I live in Markham. He says, we got tons and tons of badminton teams, of tournaments, and everything else. I said, so who's the go-to chiropractor for badminton? He says, there isn't one. I pulled out my phone, I put in badmintoninjury.com, and it was available. I said, let's buy that right now. I said, for the next 2 years. So he can't even practice. He can't even treat anyone or work within that industry. But in 2 years, he's going to develop such a demand because he's going to have a website. He's writing articles. He's working on a book. He's going to be doing videos, everything else on badminton injuries. Why? Because he understands badminton injuries. Could I do something? Could I treat a badminton player? Yeah, I'm a generalist. I don't know anything about badminton. I don't know the injuries. I don't even know how to play the game. So
you
if they
even
say,
know the name
yeah,
of that little thing?
Yeah.
It's called a shuttlecock.
Yeah.
That's about it. I don't know why they named it.
I call it a birdie. I guess I got it wrong. But so
that's
anyway,
what the amateurs call it.
yeah, there you go. So, and you know what? Someone who's at a high level, and if I said birdie, they would go, yeah, this guy knows nothing about it. And so therefore, they're not going to come and see me. I'm a generalist. So I'm turning this third-year chiropractic student into a specialist, into something that he's passionate about. And as soon as he graduates, he's going to have hundreds and hundreds of people that want to see him. Why? He's the go-to person. So my focus for here today, and Brendan asked me, what do you want people to get out of today? I said, my main focus, two things. Number one is to increase your own immunity, give you some information to protect yourself. The second thing is, how do I protect the way that I work? What is it going to take in order for me to get back into the actual gym and actually have a career on that? Because, I mean, all the gyms are closed. We have no idea on how we're going to be able to interact. If they're giving out $1,000 fines for walking too close together, and they gave out a bunch downtown Toronto for that, how's this going to change when you get in the gym and you're actually working with someone and basically spotting them? You can't keep your distance. You can't be 6 feet away because it's not safe. And the person knows that it's not safe either. So it's going to be a really weird situation, and no one has actually even talked about or understood it. But right now, you have the opportunity to create your own identity. And Brendan was kind enough basically giving me the moniker of finding your voice. What is it that you want to say? What's the impact that you want to go out there? And the challenge, I always get pushback from people. They always say, well, if I specialize in cycling, I love cycling and I want to do strength training for cycling, but are there enough cyclists? And I'm like, you see 6 people a day, maybe 8. How many people do you need? You know, you're not like me where I'm seeing 30 to 60 patients in a day. You're seeing, 3 to 6 to 8. You're not seeing a ton of people. And even more importantly, people will gravitate to your enthusiasm. What attracts people to anything that you do is your enthusiasm. I'm super enthusiastic about powerlifting, weight training, and anything else. Am I at as far as cycling or badminton? No. And that's okay. It's what my passion is, and that's what my gift is. And so I want people to really sit down. Is there a certain body part? Is there a certain, do you want to become the shoulder person? Do you want to become the low back person? Even though Stu McGill is the guru, great. Go get certified by him with all of his courses. Watch his stuff. Become immersed in it. So all of a sudden, you have a waiting list practice. You have people are waiting for you to get into that. Is there a certain condition that you want to focus in on? Is it rotator cuff injuries, or is there some kind of low back dysfunction that you want to work on? Or is it a sport? There's a clinic in California They do one thing, and people from all over the world fly in, and it's for ankle sprains. And all they do is they do a certain traction technique. And I talked to one of the guys that worked there. I said, can you show me it? He says, no, it's proprietary. It's a friggin' traction technique that I showed up on Swiss and I posted on Facebook. You guys can see it on Facebook and Instagram. That's the technique. But people from all over the world fly in. Why? They're flying into a clinic to basically get their leg traction that someone else could. So if you become the go-to person, if you put your personality out there, if you start working with certain individuals and taking seminars, and there's a ton of online seminars, the days of generalists is basically, I think it's gone. I think it's gone. People will just not have the money for that. This is hard talk. This isn't happy talk. This is sort of reality that everyone's like, hey, it's opened up. It's going back to normal. They have socially, mentally, and emotionally damaged so many of us. I'm going a little squirrely here, just being by myself. And, you know, I have Zaza, you know, my dog, she's been amazing. My girlfriend, Wendy, she's been amazing. Everyone, you know, and I'm talking on the phone, but it's different. I'm used to seeing dozens and dozens and dozens of people a day. So for me to be thrown into isolation, it's not easy. I keep myself busy. I got a dozen different projects that I'm coming out with. I'm taking advantage of this opportunity to actually recreate what I'm actually doing. And so the other thing that I want to do, and I talked to Brendan about it, is I want to get the health professionals and the fitness professionals to work together. As far as chiropractors probably have the greatest affinity to personal trainers, primarily because we don't do a whole lot of exercise. Physiotherapists, I've hired many physiotherapists when I ran different clinics. And so they're either exercise-based, they're either modality-based, ultrasound, interferential current, TENS, or they're manually based, meaning that they're doing manipulation and everything else. So in the physio world, they've already learned on how to do the exercises very, very well. But their rehab exercises, they're not strength and conditioning. So they haven't really learned that world that much, unless they took extra courses for it. So in the personal training industry, we can work together so much with the chiropractors, and over the years, that affinity can work really well, where the chiropractor, if they understand that you're a specialist in a certain area, I have no problem referring over to you. But you have to demonstrate to me that you actually have the knowledge and that you're not a generalist, that you're a jack of all trades. And you came out with the comment that, you know, it's a mile wide and an inch deep. What you want to be, what Stu McGill is he's an inch wide and a mile deep. I'm an inch wide and I'm a mile deep in the weight training injury industry. So you want to basically start focusing and tunneling and building it that much more. Now, is my practice completely weight training injury people? No. About 50% of them are. Personal trainers, weight trainers, bodybuilders, powerlifters, anyone that weight train. But guess what? They start referring over their mother. They go, my mom has low back pain. Do you think you can help her? This is what I say. I'll do my best. And I always tell them, if I'm able to help them, I'll let them know. If I'm not able to help them, I'll let them know that, and I'll refer them on to the right person. And I do that all the time. And what they pick up on is authenticity. They pick up on, I'm not doing this for the money. You know, and you take the money aspect out. So my focus and my goal is to try and get that together. So I was telling Brendan, one of the guys that I've met and been following for many years from digital marketer, Perry Belcher and Kevin Nation put together a business survival Facebook group, and giving you ideas on how you can actually maximize, how you can basically make this the greatest experience of your life, even though it's going to be different, and it's going to be massively different. And so if you can, and it's going to be massively different, not just financially, but emotionally and also socially. Like, how do we get back to sitting in stadiums? How do we go to restaurants? How's that going to work? How do you go to a bar? You know, dating. Like, I mean, do you have to have a test before you go on a date? Like, I mean, It's everything. Your life is going to be completely different than what it was before, because there's been financial, mental, and emotional damage and dysfunction on that. So you can reverse that on taking control and creating strategies. So my goal is to have the chiropractors start referring to the personal trainers to rebuild your practice, because you're going to need it. The focus also is, as a personal trainer, if someone is outside, has different issues, that they can refer over to the chiropractors, and I'll put together a group. I've already been getting emails from all my chiropractic friends telling them about my idea. They're all like, yeah, I'm on board. And these are the chiropractors that will not throw the personal trainer under the bus. What I mean by that is, a lot of times someone will refer, say you have low back pain and your client has low back pain, you send them there, and then the chiropractor says, oh, it's your personal trainer that, caused the low back pain. You just threw the personal trainer under the bus. Mm-hmm. These people don't do that. You don't want to work with people that do that. Yeah. You want to work with people that say, you know what, this is what we need to do, and then you send them back. And you create a healthcare team where everyone is talking. You know what, I make a few recommendations for exercises, give it a try to the personal trainer. Personal trainer tries it. You know what, these two worked, this one didn't. Okay, what do you recommend? What ideas do you have? Can we try this? Yeah, based on your injury, that sounds like a really good idea. Thank you, give it a try. And that way the patient feels like the added value is enormous. What you have to do is you have to increase your value so much by being a specialist. And I just saw my graphic the other day, again, of a chunk of metal is $5. If you break it all up to making paper clips, it's now $130.
Wow.
If you make it into springs, into extremely expensive watches, it's now $100,000 or $300,000. The same block of metal, but it's transformed itself into something more and more specialized and more value. And that's what you want to do. So you want to think inch wide, mile deep. Hey, and if you go inch wide and you're only 2 inches deep, 6 inches, a foot, you're going further and further, but it's a focus. Yes, Brendan.
So I know this can be really scary for a lot of people, the whole concept of specializing and sort of fixing your passion with your profession. And so I know a lot of times people they'll have some fears that may hold them back on making that jump. Similar to, high school is a very generalized knowledge, but then you may go on to university and pick a specialization. And that's kind of like what's happening here with our career. We're going to take our generalized information, we're going to apply it in a specified way. Now, one of the things that you and I were talking about the other night was, when you can crush it with that one specialized niche, you can expand it out from there.
Yeah.
Right? So, and I know one example for me was, I was doing mental toughness with curlers. People who slide rocks on ice. And I was doing this over 10 years ago. And the stuff I was doing was profound. And they were getting breakthrough success, realizing that most of curling is a head game. It's chess on ice more than anything. Wow. But then I was just able to take the same tools I had built for curlers and just repackage them. And now I teach them in exercise therapy, and I've used them for other things, but it's really like, I think sometimes we all need reinforcement that, picking that niche, you can really crush it there and then expand it outward. But when you have a niche, you're easier for people to find. So if somebody's looking to get out to lose weight, but they're a single mom, they might be like, well, there's a million books on weight loss, but there's one book written on weight loss for single moms. I'm going to get that book. Yeah. So I think just having that message, you got to, as Dale Carnegie once said, you got to bait the hook to suit the fish. Just having that message to make yourself easier to find, I think is really good reinforcement for all of us.
And I think the big distinction that I want to say is that you don't need to throw out everything that you have done and your entire practice. It's not as if, okay, I'm only going to accept people that if I want to do strength training for cycling and work with cycling teams and everything else, I'm only going to work with that. So I can't see, no, don't do that. What I am saying is this is a transformation. Everyone wants change, you know, and the whole thing is that, you know, if you live in the circle world, this is a Tony Robbins metaphor. If you live in a circle world and you see the people that live in the square world, you know, oh, it looks better over there. It's not, because it's still just two-dimension. What you want to do, what transformation is that you take a two-dimensional, a circle, and what do you make that into? A sphere. You take a square and you basically expand it out. You transform it into a box. You take a triangle and you expand it out. You transform it. You add different components on it, different dimensions, and it's now a pyramid. You want to become more three-dimensional than two-dimensional. This opportunity right now, you have enough time. You're not doing anything else. You binged out on Tiger King and Netflix and everything else.
I have not. You cannot prove that.
You know,
not yet. Not yet.
Right now, you're probably going, I really don't know if I should be drinking wine at 2 o'clock. Maybe it's not a good idea. So anyways, this is an enormous, especially since we have another 4 weeks of this. And then we have no idea. Some people I just talked to someone yesterday, they got word that the restaurants are looking at opening up in July. And I'm like, wow. So this is a 2 to 3 month. So the economy is going to be, it's going to be completely different, you know, on that. So you have a huge opportunity. What is it that I really want to make a difference on? This is your side project. But the interesting thing now, since you can't work with anyone, it is your main project. You can put 4 to 6 to 8 hours in on my passion. If you want to take a look at a body part, and I want to become the, Brendan, who in Toronto, you're well connected with everyone, who is the #1 personal trainer for shoulders?
I would have to think about that.
Right. Isn't that a problem?
Yeah, well, I would call it an opportunity.
Yes. But think of that. Like, I mean, we got 50, 60 people online here. Anyone can take it. So it's like, well, what makes me a specialist? You claim it. Mm-hmm. Heck, I claimed weight training injuries. I'm the weight training injury dude. There's a couple other people out there. Jordan Shallow, he's phenomenal. You know, we got different chiros down in the States. They're all good. But I put together books and articles and, you know, courses and symposiums and everything else. And I still continue to do that. I'm still buying books online, you know, on weight training. Everyone's like, well, do they really want to see another weight training book? Yeah, it's your voice. It's your interpretation. It's your ideas to go through that. So you can take a look at any body part you want. If you want to become the personal trainer for knee problems, oh my God, I'd send you people over because you understand it better than anyone else. Is there a certain condition? Are there certain exercises for carpal tunnel? Are there certain exercises for, you know, rotator cuff, for low back? You know, any of them. To see Stu McGill, do you know how much he charges for an appointment?
Stu McGill for an appointment, I'm going to guess 500?
2,000.
2,000. Wow.
Yeah.
And he probably just takes you through the stuff in his books anyway.
Yeah. But he assesses you and he modifies it and everything else. That's the power of focusing in on becoming a specialist. And when I stopped doing Swiss, give you an idea. This is how brilliant Stu is. So in 2015, I decided to do Swiss again. I phone up Stu. I say, Stu, do you want to do come and present for me in Swiss? He says, well, what's the theme? Each year I have a theme. I said, it's on shoulder. He says, no. I go, why? He says, I'm a low back guy. When you do low back, give me a call. I went, all right. So I phoned him in 2016. Stu, I'm doing Swiss again. I'm doing low back. Want to come? Yep. I'll even do a pre-con for you. I went, awesome. Now, Stu is brilliant with the shoulder. When you talk to him about the shoulder, he understands everything about it. but that's not his passion. That's not his research. And Stu is probably one of the most humble people, you know, because we'll talk about different ideas and he's like, yeah, I'm really not quite sure about that. And he's coming up with new ideas and concepts and everything else. So you can take a look at a certain condition or a sport. And with any sport, you have 3 different groups that you can work with. You can work with the youth group. Let's take soccer. You can take youth group, soccer. You can take university, college, high school soccer. You can take adult soccer, or you can go professional. I have friends, Heather Pearson, you know her, she works basically with the Premier Leagues, some of the different players. So you can take your specialty, and she loves, sorry, not soccer, football. She loves football. She understands everything about football. She knows all the names of the players. She knows all the names of the teams. You know, I don't know any of that, but she loves it, and she gets called out, and she does week-long seminars and working with the athletes, and is on the sideline, everything else of that nature. So you can take a look at the sport, and you may go, well, do I have enough specialty for that? So one of my best friends, Matt Nichol, he's a strength conditioning coach here. He worked for the Toronto Maple Leafs for 7 years as a strength conditioning coach. He was the first one, the true first strength conditioning coach. And now he has his own facility, and he has probably one of the largest protein practices out there for hockey. Now, Matt has never played hockey. He's a football player, but he learned everything about hockey. He understands the energy systems. He understands the training. He understands the mentality of it. And he does everything around hockey. Heck, he even invented a sports drink called BioSteel that he actually formulated himself, would mix it all up, and he made it specifically for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And then someone said, you should sell it. And he went, all right. And then he started selling it, and it's all over. All the hockey teams use it. Tiger Woods used it. Like, I mean, everyone was using it. Basketball. He had his name for the Raptors as far as BioSteel. All the Raptors were sitting on BioSteel chairs. You know, and that's just a concept that he had the courage and the ideas and the focus to say, you know what, this is what I'm going to do. And he got great information from Dr. Mauro Di Pasquale, from Eric Serrano, half a dozen other people. What's the best formulation? What are the best supplements? And what did Matt know about sports supplements? Nothing. He's not a chemist. He's not a biochemist. So you can take anything. So you can take any of these different ideas, whether it's a body part, a condition, a sport, and it makes your marketing so much more powerful. If I'm a personal trainer, how do you get your word out there, you know, that I want to train you? But if I'm a personal trainer for cyclists, all of a sudden I hit online, all the cycling teams. I hit the Facebook groups, the Instagram groups, the YouTube groups, LinkedIn groups. I start doing mailings. I contact all the magazines that are cyclists. I want to write an article. And they'll go, all right. You start doing seminars on how to put it all together. And all of a sudden, your reputation as the go-to person for cycling, if that's what your passion is, and don't do this unless you're passionate about it, because you're going to burn out. It's kind of like being in a relationship that you're not really into it. You're kind of dating, you know. It's not going to last very long unless you're enthusiastic about it, unless you really put your heart and soul, and this is a real connection. If it fits good, man, you'll do anything to do it. You'll do anything to do it. No different than if you're with someone, you'll do anything to help them.
So I'm just going to summarize for those who are just tuning in. Basically, you know, to paraphrase a lot of what you've said, and also to give you a chance to take a time out and get some refreshments. Excellent job, by the way.
Thank you.
It's going to be a dogfight when this thing ends. It's going to be a dogfight. There's going to be so many people competing for a smaller, more sensitive pool of clients. So the idea is to find your unique voice, find your passion. What is it that you're curious about when you're not working? Because if you can take that and you can make that your voice, you can render the competition irrelevant. because they're not relevant to you because
No.
you're the expert that deals with this specialization. And you're going to be easier to find, and it can really blow up from there. And I've experienced that in my career with a few specialization phases I've gone through. Even one time I took a university football player and he had back pain. He had seen a number of doctors and therapists. He met up with me. We did some pelvic realignment stuff, got him pain-free. He ended up getting drafted first round in the CFL draft. He won the Grey Cup. And then he told everybody about me. And he said I wouldn't be playing football if it wasn't for this one. And then the next thing I know, I've got 20 pro football players on my roster, all through word of mouth. And it started with one pro bono client. And then I had season tickets for like every team and everything else. And then I got bored with it. I'm just like, the novelty wore off. And I'm like, this isn't, and I was doing a lot of preparing people for the combines. You know, I'd be like, here's how you pass this test. Here's some little nuances on that test, this test. And I wasn't doing anything completely revolutionary. I was taking a lot of barbell strength training methods. I was combining it with muscle testing to be able to find the weak links and strengthen them. I was mixing in mental toughness, and I just packaged it up and had some nuances for all the football tests and some nuances related to specific position and stuff like that. But that was it. And it was taking generalized knowledge, repackaging it in a specific way, and it blew up with just one client. Right?
Yeah.
But I think
that's all you need. And did you play football?
You know, I did play university football, but by play, that's an operative term. You might say I rode the pines. Okay, so I was a bench warmer who understood football culture and understood the game. But I was on the university team for 3 seasons, so I understood it enough to be able to relate to it. But yeah, and that was just, you know, once you find your voice and you get it out there, you can let the magic happen, I think is my words of encouragement for people.
And it makes it fun.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. When I'm in clinic, I'm having fun. You know, when I'm at seminars, I'm having fun. If I go to a nutrition seminar, I'll go, how can I apply this to weight training? If I go to a brain injury seminar, how can I apply this to weight training? Because I know the brain, and you've been to enough seminars, impacts the whole neurological system. When I do an adjustment to help someone weight training, I'm actually affecting the brain. How does that work? So I'm always going back to how does this work? And it gives you a focus. It gives you a determinate point that you can go back to. But the whole thing is that you need to get your marketing plan ready now. And good thing I'm alone.
Take some tonic water, quick, take some tonic water. You need a Kinakin COVID cocktail. Stat.
Exactly. Yeah, give me some vitamin C. Here we go.
Careful on the vitamin C. We're on a toilet paper shortage right now.
Yeah. Well, I have it all in my basement.
It's been there for 10 years.
Yeah. So I think my message for today is get your marketing plan focused now on your passion. Transform yourself. Go from 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional. Go from a square to a box. Go from a triangle to a pyramid. Become more powerful. Create powerful information that I would be interested in. That I would phone you up one day and go, you know what? Do you want to present at Swiss? I just saw this really cool article. Your nuances on this. Would you like to do that? You know, and you know, most people would go, yeah. You know, if you like presenting, and it's no different than you, Brendan. You know, you took the muscle testing and you created exercise therapy. And I went, you know what? You're coming up with some really unique things. You got to present this at Swiss. You did a fantastic job. Got rave reviews. So the whole thing is, what is your message? What is your voice? What impact do you want to do? Because that's our greatest gift. Is we're able to take generalized knowledge, package it, so that now we can impact people. Because a lot of people are going to need help, you know, on a lot of different levels, including yourself. So you need to basically take care of yourself immunity-wise as far as your own health. And you also got to have the health of your business, because that's going to be impacted. Because if you have no clients, it's going to be really, really tough. And unemployment insurance is going to be overtaxed and everything else. So that's my biggest message. The other thing that you can, I'm just going to briefly talk about this. I know we've been talking for quite a while, is are there some other things that we can utilize to protect myself from this virus? One of it is this stuff, and it's called hypochlorous acid. And Dr. Karim Dehani turned me on to this. And what it is they take NaCl plus H2O plus electricity, and it creates hypochlorous acid. If you put in Google HOCl, this is one of the most powerful, turn it a bit.
Okay, yeah, there we go. Perfect.
Hypochlorous acid.
Okay.
And very powerful viricide. More powerful than a lot of these different sanitizers that are out there. The nice part is, what's the end result of this? It's salt water, but it's electrified. So if I have, so after, I've been doing some emergency patients here, so I'll take this and I'll just spray it on them. It's just a spray. It's basically water. These hand gels, these everything else, it's drying everyone's hands out and everything else. This is very powerful. So this is one of the things that works very well. And you can buy, I was just at Nature's Emporium. They got it for $6 there. So you can pick up some bottles there. Whole Foods probably has it. The actual website, if you want to order it online, is libertynaturals.ca.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
So you can order that. I ordered 50 bottles. So that's the first thing. The other things, we are going to need to sanitize the environment. So if there's any gym owners, anything else of that nature here, there's two things that you can use. Is it okay to talk about this, Brendan?
Yeah, go ahead. Right now, we just have the hardcores hanging in with us. The people. So
okay.
This is.
But it'll still be recorded, right?
Yep.
Okay.
This is recorded.
Number one is ozone. And if you, and we could put a post after this as far as people can sign up to that Facebook group that I'm putting together, because you got to know how to use ozone. The other one is UVC light, ultraviolet light at 253 nanometers. And if you understand how to use that, that can also basically destroy the virus, because the biggest problem is that people are going to have a fear of going back into environment. Is your environment sanitized? So you can sanitize the air, you can sanitize the equipment.
Now, one of the things I really like that you had shared with me is that it's a good idea to put these measures into practice, but also to notify your clients in advance of all of these preventative measures you're taking. So saying, just so you know, we're using this, we're sanitizing everything in this way, everything in this way. So just so you know, we've gone the extra mile to ensure your safety during these sensitive times.
Absolutely. And if you do that, that will quell their fears, because the biggest fear, they're going to basically have a fear of getting the virus off of you or off of in the environment, because that's what they've been teaching us. And the second thing is that the whole focus as far as focusing in on a specialization, so they won't have any money. So fear of lack of value, if you want to call it that, because you can stand there and count reps and put together a little program, but the more specific you become, the better. And you can actually even decrease the amount of time that you spend with people. Meaning that, why do you need to spend an hour? Why not spend 30 minutes? I shared with you the one bodybuilder, Mike Menzer. I saw him training at Gold's Gym in California in 1987. And at the time, personal trainers did not exist. And what he did is that he would train someone, and he did this heavy duty style training, sort of Arthur Jones, 1 or 2 sets to exhaustion. Dorian Yates used that same principle. And so he trained this one guy. I watched, and the training session was 20 minutes. The session cost in 1987 was $150. So
Wow.
Mike was one of the first personal trainers. So he could see 3 people in an hour.
Mhm.
And so I talked to the guy, got trained, and I went, so was it worth $150? He says, absolutely. He says, I understand the mental and emotional aspect of training. He says, I never trained that hard. Now I understand you can only do 1 or 2 sets. I tried doing it on my own. I couldn't because I didn't understand. I didn't experience it. And same thing when people train with Dorian, it's a completely different experience. Like he takes you to the nth degree, you know, but you can't do a lot. Otherwise you break apart. So in other ways, you can modify your training. It doesn't need to be an hour. It can be 20 minutes. It can be a half hour. It can be 45 minutes, whatever that you actually want to do, because you can modify. People are not interested in long things. People don't want to spend half an hour with me in a clinic. I'll spend 5-10 minutes with them. They're interested in results. So I'll muscle test it, find all the different weaknesses. I'll do my treatment and then re-muscle test it. And it's all strong, increased range of motion, pain is decreased. Doing more is not going to make it better. And I can do that in 5 to 10 minutes. Versus some people spend half an hour or an hour, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why not reduce it down? So,
yeah. So intelligently questioning all of those aspects of our job that we've kind of just blindly accepted. Sessions
yes.
don't even have to be an hour.
No.
Right? We don't have to be a general so basically just revisiting all of our assumptions.
Yeah.
And just intelligently thinking about how you can pivot and shift and adapt in order to best evolve with the times.
You're going to need to evolve. You're going to need to transform. You got to become bigger, more powerful, and more of an impact in a specific area.
Yeah.
The era of the Denny's restaurants and everything else is gone. Is basically, we're going to see, I think it's already like 10 or 15% of all restaurants in literally 4 weeks, they're never opening again.
Mm-hmm.
They're never opening again. We're going to see a decimation of a lot of different businesses, and a lot of them became too generalists. So the more specific you become, the more powerful your message is. I learned this the hard way. I focused in on, when I started in 1999, on weight training injuries.
Yep.
And over the years, everyone's like, you know, it's such a small market. You should go after weight training and sports and all that. So I tried that in 2000, 2002. And then people went, you should do wellness. It's huge.
I remember that one. You had the new logo for Smith.
I know.
It looked very angelic and elegant.
Yeah, angelic. It had rainbow colors.
Glowing.
You know, it was the
I remember that. I was
LGBTQ.
there.
Yeah. And that was in 2004. And it was horrible. I spent $150,000 on marketing. I mailed everyone. I had radio ads. I was doing everything possible. Less than 400 people showed up. And
It was actually my favorite Swiss conference. No, I'm just kidding. But it was actually really good. I thought it was a great conference.
The conference was good, but the message, everyone's like, well, what's wellness? And even nowadays, we don't know what wellness is. There is no definition. So I went in 2005, I got the message that, you know what? You got to do one more. Best of Swiss. I did it by myself. When I did in 2004, I had 3 people working for me, doing everything else. In 2005, I did it all by myself. In literally 2 months, I brought in all the presenters. I had like close to 700 people show up because it was back on weight training injuries.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was known for. I wasn't known for wellness. I didn't enjoy it. Like it was just, everything was wrong.
Yeah,
but I went from a specialist to a generalist. I did the exact opposite of what I'm telling everyone here. I experienced it. That's why if you can live off of because I think on that one, I think I lost about $200,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So when you make that mistake, and it was a learning lesson, if you want to call it that, because it was. Because I'd always heard about that in business, but it's kind of like, when Coke came out with the new Coke. And everyone's like, what do you mean the new Coke? I like the old Coke. And they went, oh, sorry, we'll bring back the old Coke. So even giant businesses like Coca-Cola can make mistakes like that. So my focus today, for all the hardcore staying here at the end, focus in on becoming a specialist. Transform yourself into the go-to person for that area. And it'll impact your life on so many different ways, especially now, because we need people like yourself. We need specialists. We don't need generalists anymore. There are going to be more than enough people. Now's your time to actually step out and become something bigger.
So listen to your passion, listen to what's embedded inside of you, and become the specialist that you were always meant to be. This is sort of your cocooning phase before you emerge into your unique greatness at this time. And I think, you know, a lot of people, I think there's a lot of people who may be held back because they might think that they were good and they might have a sense of confidence. But I think that Kodak went through the same thing. They thought they were good and they thought they were untouchable, but then the landscape changed, right? And we all remember, you know, a Kodak moment, the photography company. Digital photography came the new thing. And by the time Kodak realized they were behind, they didn't adapt, it was too late and they went bankrupt. Because as dominant as they were, they did not evolve, they did not reinvent themselves because they thought, we're good. We don't need to change. People will come to us, right?
Guess who invented the digital camera? Kodak.
There's an interesting.
I knew one of the CFOs for Kodak in Rochester. And she said, yeah, we invented it. It was invented in 74, 75. And they put it on the shelf because they didn't want it to underwrite because their film business was so huge. And by the time that it rolled out, they tried coming out with, their cameras were unbelievable. As far as digital, I have one. It was an unbelievable camera. It was one of the first Bluetooth cameras and multi-mirrors and all that. I think they sold maybe 25, 30 cameras, period.
Oh my goodness.
I know. And these one of those DSLR type of cameras. And they went bankrupt because they didn't pivot. They didn't shift with the time because they were so in the old model. And that was still, they could have overtaken that and still had this understanding and seeing what actually occurs.
So I think a good thing is, you know, fear is a very dominant emotion right now.
Yeah.
Use your fear for you. Think about it, you know, how much scarier it will be in the post-COVID world if you don't find your voice.
Yeah. If you don't have a plan. If you don't have a
strategy. How scary it'll be at the end of your life when you look back and you realize, you know, I kind of went with the flow and did the general thing, but I wonder what would have happened if I actually mixed my passion with my profession. So turn your fear on itself and scare yourself to these alternative realities.
And here's the other aspect. People go, well, do I have to do this for the rest of my life? No.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to focus in on low back and all of a sudden, you know, you're doing this for a year and it's so different with the football, you sort of go, you know what? I'm not sure if I want to do this. All right. Change to something else. It's okay. You don't need to basically give everything away or become neurotic that, well, what if I don't like it? Well, it's no different than dating. You go out for a while and all of a sudden it develops into something spectacular or it doesn't and you move on.
Absolutely. Now I have a couple of residual questions just to ask here. Jimmy wanted to know what dosage of zinc do you think is appropriate considering that zinc can offset copper levels? Do you have any general?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's for a long-term type of thing. Right now, I think the biggest thing for the next month to 6 weeks is to make sure that you do get enough zinc. So I would go with 50.
50, okay. Chris Allen wants to know kids' dosages on the Kinakin COVID cocktail. How might you modify the dosages you recommended on vitamin C and such for children?
Definitely decrease it. Obviously, they're a lot smaller. So for kids, you could probably get them on anywhere between 500 to 750 milligrams of vitamin C. The whole thing is bowel tolerance, you know, on that. Yeah. For the B complex, probably a nice B complex 50. You know, it's a water soluble. Vitamin C is water soluble. You know, B complex is water soluble. instead of four Brazil nuts, give them 1 or 2.
Yep. Yep. Perfect. We also had a question. Somebody wanted to know where they could research more about the 8 different types of COVID out there.
Yeah, there's a number of different people that are investigating it. The one guy is, I saw him, he's a virologist out of New York. I'll have to get back to you on that. But he was basically saying there's also different variations of the actual receptor. That's why certain people get sick and certain people don't. And I think there's like 15 different variations gene-wise, whether or not that ACE2 and whether or not the virus can actually even go into that. So that's why certain people are exposed to it and there's no problem. Other people, they die. It's a genetic component. It's like certain people, they are born with sickle cell anemia or thalassemia or any of these other disorders.
And then Matthias actually asked, how do you find out, how do you get clear on what your passion is? Do you have any advice on to get clear what's embedded inside of you?
What do you read? What do you find yourself watching? What basically, look at your habits that you have already. Take a look at your library of books. Are they focused on a specific type of training? If you have one book on, say, general training and 5 books on powerlifting, guess what? It's probably powerlifting. Mm-hmm. If you have all of Stu McGill's materials, guess what? It's probably whatever that you find yourself already investigating and that you research yourself. And you can become a generalist. And the whole thing is that if you don't know, just choose one. Sort of go, you know what? I think this would be really good. And then as you go down that rabbit hole to see whether or not that it's interesting, because I mean, any market that you go after will be there because no one else is doing it.
It's an untapped opportunity. And, to play off your rabbit hole analogy, the best way to catch 2 rabbits is to go after one at a time.
Yeah.
So just pick one passion to start and go there and begin with that. So
find out what you're already reading and watching. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. So what I want to do is I want to be able to wrap things up here. So once again, we discussed a whole bunch of strategies to keep yourself healthy and to keep your clients healthy. We had a whole bunch of different ideas that you've thoroughly researched. We talked about how this is a very unique time. Problems like this happen for you, not to you.
Yes.
So that we can remove the distractions so that you finally have the time that you never had before so that you can find your voice and clarify your voice and render the competition irrelevant by doing something that nobody else is doing. And as discussed, nobody else is really doing a whole lot of specializing out there anyway.
No.
Right?
And so it's why, and if they are, big deal. It's a town of 4 million people here in Toronto. You don't need that many people. If you get 50 people follow you, it's like, that's awesome. Like, yeah. I mean, you don't need a lot of people. This is a great Tony Robbins quote. He says, you know what? In winter, certain people freeze to death. Other people go skiing. It's not the environment. It's actually what you do with it. So if you basically stay still and don't embrace it, you're going to freeze to death. If you decide to take it upon yourself and experience something and be happy that it's cold and that you have snow so you can go down a hill fast. I'm a skier. So it's never the environment. And this is a really weird environment. And you can navigate it and create strategies on how am I going to come out of this more powerful? Because that's the biggest thing that we have to really create. You have to create your own strategy. The government's not going to bail you out. The companies are not going to bail you out. They may not even be there. We're going to probably see a lot of gyms collapse. Here's the last piece of information. There's an enormous opportunity. If you always wanted to open your gym, do you know how many gyms are going to try and go under? And they'll either have everything already all set up and you can probably buy the gym for pennies on the dollar. A number of businesses are going to go under. So if you always wanted to have a gym, there is no better time than this time right now, because the opportunity to get all the equipment, all the leaseholds, everything else already created. If you get a small gym, small studio, it's going to be enormous. It's going to be enormous because a lot of people won't have, if they're already in trouble financially, this is going to friggin' wipe them out. If you walk up to them and give them a half decent deal, they'll probably take it. So if you do have some cash or you have ability to get cash, this could expand. If you want to break out of a big box gym and all of a sudden have your own studio because you have your own message. You know, the whole thing is when associates work with me in the clinic, you know, I inspire them. Most chiropractors, when they go in with another chiropractor, will usually stay for about 18 months, primarily because they have their own way, their own voice, their own style. Chiropractors are very entrepreneurial. Personal trainers are very similar. They want their own studio. They don't want to be told by what to do and how to do things. So you can easily build in your own facility for a fraction of the price. It's just going to be an unbelievable buying experience. We're seeing that they're expecting houses to go down 40%.
Whew.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, how can you buy or sell a house now? You can't. You can't even do a walkthrough.
Yeah.
You got to buy, if you want to buy a house, it has to be sight unseen.
Mm-hmm. So you got to dress like a ninja and go out and view it in the middle of the night, I guess.
Yeah. You know, whatever it takes. But I mean, that's the big thing, is that you want to take a look at what are the opportunities. Right now, the people that hustle, you have two things. You have time, and if you hustle, man, you're going to friggin' crush it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, right now you have that opportunity. People that don't hustle, do anything else, the hard talk, not the happy talk, you're going to get crushed because the easiness is not going to be there. And actually, even with any of the other jobs, you know, if you were a waiter in a restaurant and decided to become a personal trainer, because that's usually the way that happens, when you go back, it's like, well, I'll get another job at a restaurant. Yeah, that probably is not going to happen. A lot of restaurants aren't going to be hiring. And if they do, it's going to be at half capacity. One person at a table, not two.
So I think it's really interesting because everybody is in the same situation in which you're torn between two choices, and both of them are hard choices. Hard choice number one is that you hustle now. Hard choice number two is you don't hustle, and it's going to be really hard for you when this all blows over. Two hard choices to pick between. Yes. That's where we're all at right now.
But one makes sense. You have the time, you have the energy, you have the focus, you have the internet, and now you can just drop all your different ideas, talk to different people, you know, and just get your message out. Heck, you know, get a hold of me. I'll walk you through some stuff and help you out in any way that I can. You know, and that's what this whole, you know, health and fitness professional group that I'm putting together is. We can help each other. You know, if you get one chiropractor on your side, heck, they could fill up your practice pretty quick. If you're good, if you're knowledgeable, if you're competent, if you have a half decent personality and you're a nice person, that's not hard. We are looking for those type of people, but we're looking for specialists. We're not looking for generalists.
Excellent. So just to recap on everything out there today, you know, we're gonna stay healthy. We're gonna find our voice, but more so, I just want to reiterate that this whole experience we've been going through has taught us a lot of things, and it's revealed sides of people's character that we didn't know was there before. And I just want to speak on behalf of everybody and say that it's just given us further reinforcement on what an extraordinary soul you are and how much of a heart of gold you have to be able to take your passion for learning and everything else and be so generous in sharing your wisdom. And one thing that I want to encourage people to think about is the reason that people like myself, I'm actually really hard to please or impress when it comes to knowledge and wisdom and experts. I'm a tough cookie in that sense, but I've you know, I will not stop singing your praises. And part of your greatness and part of the greatness for everybody who's still on this talk is it's not so much about the glory and praise that you seek for yourself. People's greatness always comes down to how much they give of themselves.
Yes. Yep.
Think about everybody that's ever inspired you or everyone that's ever impressed you. It's because they gave you something. They might have given you a mental or emotional boost. They might have given you some breakthrough wisdom, or some breakthrough inspiration. And, you know, anybody that ever talks about you, in my experience, has had nothing but praise and gratitude towards you because of how much you exemplify that for all of us. And you set a really good example for all of us to follow. And you've certainly done that in my career. And I know it's an industry where there can be a lot of egos. It's an industry that tends to attract a lot of narcissism or vanity just on the nature of the aesthetics of fitness. But it's been so refreshing and so empowering to have some true, authentic guidance from some enlightened souls like yourself. So I want to thank you for taking so much time out of your day and giving so much of yourself to everybody else. And, you know, I want to encourage people that, you know, when you want to find your greatness, just be like Ken and focus on what you can give, not what you can get. Focus on being 10 out of 10 disciplined with your hustle and your passion, and share it with others. And if you want to connect, Ken is going to be setting up that health and fitness survival group on Facebook so that we can all stay connected. You don't have to brave this storm alone.
No, go with the team.
There are all of us. We will all hold hands and stick together and make it through to the other side and help inspire each other and support each other along the way as we go through this. Anything else you want to add before we end the session, Ken?
I just want to thank you for all your support and your ability to really impact people on a lot of different levels. What inspires me the most is people take what I teach and then take it and you transformed it into something else, which is, you know, really touches my heart. So, you know, I just want to thank you for everything that you do, and hopefully we can continually to develop different aspects of it so that we can all really, you know, make a difference. But you've been a real inspiration to me. You've been a real inspiration to a lot of people, and I'll support you in any way that I can. This is going to be a bumpy ride. This is going to be a real bumpy ride. We don't need to, if you're in a boat and in a bunch of rowing, it works better with a whole bunch of us doing it in the same way versus the one person. If you do it with one person, you're going to capsize. But, you know, with all of us working together, and especially with you and your team and everything else. So I just want to, you know, put a heartfelt thanks for everything you've done for me.
Well, thank you very much. And any success I've had is a reflection of the success of other people behind the scenes, all the exercise therapy crew, Jeff Mellis, my wife, everybody else. So I pass that credit on to them. So thank you very much for sharing your time with us, Ken. We will reconnect.
We'll do it again, and have everyone just friend me on Facebook or Instagram, and I continually post stuff up there. It's Ken Kinakin on both, and that way we can stay in touch, and you can see the updates, and we can work together through this turbulent time.
And please remember to check out his Swiss video collection. I think it is an amazing, powerful resource for all of us right now. What's the link for that, Ken?
Yeah, it's SwissVideoFlix.com. So SWIS video FLIX.com. And it's set up similar to Netflix, where you can watch free for a week. And then if you choose to get a subscription, it's like $7.98 a month. And it's literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of all the top people in the world. And you could sit there and watch to your heart's desire.
So if viewers at home, if you've liked and appreciated the wisdom Ken has had to share, and you want more of that, then you have access to all of the people Ken finds value in, and all of his mentors that he had mentioned, people like David Leaf, Peter Gillette, Stu McGill, all of these experts. They're all up on there, so you can soak up more of that wisdom. They've spent countless years and countless hours packaging that wisdom into a tiny little session, each single session for you to absorb quickly. They've done the work for you in advance. So make sure you,
and that way you can find your passion. You know, all of a sudden you see some person, it's like, hey, I want to learn about that. Hey, that's the best way to do it. So at least, you know, that's the nice thing with Swiss, is that there's a ton of stuff that is there. So I just want to thank you. Thank everyone for staying. And yeah, let's work together on this. It's going to be a fun, bumpy ride. Get ready for the roller coaster.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right. I'm just going to I'm going to stop the recording here.